Jude Law's Jod Na'Nawood has landed in that galaxy far, far away, but his arrival comes with a number of questions.
The distance between us is an illusion.
Such as, what are his true intentions with the kids, and why was he sitting in a brig when he could have escaped at any time he wanted?
You're a Jedi.
His character journey looks set to be as fascinating as it is complex.
Can you keep a secret?
Before we jump in, don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video if you enjoy it, and of course remember to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to catch more. Now with all that out of the way, let's get into unraveling Jod Na'Nawood's true intentions.
You're a Jedi.
Now, the Skeleton Crew's introduced us to a group of kids, with the show very much telling the story through their eyes, and naturally, a lot of questions a child would have whilst exploring the unknown, for example, who they can trust, is then passed on to us. We watched as they embarked on an accidental journey of a lifetime when they mistakenly took their mysterious discovery out in the woods as a buried Jedi temple, when in fact it turned out to be an old pirate starship. And, well, one thing led to another, and they ended up blasting through the barrier and away from their mysterious homeworld of At-Atin.
We're lost. Really lost.
And we'll talk about how the mystery of At-Atin comes into play a bit later, but their missing planet isn't the sole mystery of the show. After the kids were taken to the pirate port by the new droid companion SM-33, they quickly found themselves being thrown into the brig, with their prospects of escape looking rather dim. That's before a mysterious shackled character emerged from the shadows offering a solution. Like, you'd think the parents in Star Wars have touched on the basics of telling their kids not to trust strangers, but then again, living on such a sheltered and self-contained planet, perhaps all the bad guys have been dealt with over the years, so they never had to worry about that. Regardless, Jude Law's Jod Na'Nawood emerged from the shadows after overhearing the kids bickering amongst one another, believing they were locked away in the brig alone. After overhearing the fact they had a ship, which they mistook as an old Jedi temple, and that they were from the mythical planet of At-Atin, he offers him a path to not only escape, but also to help him returning him home. On the one condition they'd take him along for the ride, he then went on to use the Force to levitate the key over to them so they could free themselves from their confinement. Now, to understand Jod's goal here, we first need to clear up why he's in the brig in the first place. I think we can all agree he is 110% the guy that led the pirate gang to the single credit in the show's opening moments.
Cold, hard credits.
Captain Silvo. He was then turned on by his crew, and whilst they didn't kill him and throw him out the airlock, because, well, where's the fun in that, they stuck him down in the brig to rot. Now, one of the biggest questions coming away from Jod's reveal is that why, if he's always had the means to escape, didn't he do so before? Instead, he chose to stay down there and suffer. Well, I believe the best possible answer for this is he didn't really have anything to escape to. You see, once he escaped, he would have found himself on a starport in the middle of space, surrounded by some of the most violent pirates in the galaxy that wouldn't think twice about killing him. On top of this, he had no crew to back him up, and most importantly, he had no ship to escape on, so despite the fact he could have escaped the brig if he so wanted, the likelihood is he wouldn't have made it much further than that. Now, before we go any further, we first need to address the elephant in the room. Is this guy a Jedi, or rather an opportunistic criminal? Well, the short answer is no, he's definitely not a Jedi, at least not anymore. The Jedi Order fell a long time ago, and whilst there are still some active in the galaxy during this time, for every Ahsoka there's also a Balen Skull, who decided to go down a different career path and become a mercenary for hire. And the fact we witnessed Jod leading a pirate attack at the start of the show,
At long last, I brought you to the only thing that matters.
bringing death upon his own crew, but also that of the innocents on board the freighter they attacked, that should be enough to tell us this isn't a guy who upholds peace and justice above all else. But as mentioned, we can't rule out the fact he once was, given his ability to wield the Force. In fact, if Jod's age lines up roughly with Jude Law's, it would have likely made him a Padawan during the time the Order fell, possibly even old enough to be a fully trained Jedi Knight. This means chances are he began training at an incredibly early age, where he would have had the Jedi way drilled into him. However, one popular theory out there right now is that he's no more than a con that probably used magnets to levitate the key, but it's also worth considering here the nature in which magnets work, and the fact we've actually seen this trick used in Star Wars before in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. If this was the case, then the key would have either been pushed or pulled almost instantly in either Jod's or the kid's direction, rather than slowly floating over. Anyways, now we've put that debate to bed, his ability to wield the Force certainly came in handy to getting him what he wants. As we discussed, this is a guy who's sitting in a brig with no real prospects of getting out of Starport alive, and once the kids are thrown down there as well, regardless of what he might have been once before, right now he's no more than an opportunistic criminal that's just been handed his ticket out of there. Listening in on their conversations, you would have quickly realized these kids possessed everything he needed to make a break for it. Not only would they act as somewhat of a makeshift crew for him, but they also came with their own transport away, and if what they're saying is true about them being from Atin,
Everyone thinks Atin is some sort of make-believe myth.
the mythical lost planet of eternal treasure, a story he would likely know a fair bit about given his line of work, then this also represents a big payday waiting for him on the other side, and given the nature of their conversations whilst he listened on in the shadows, it became clear that perhaps these kids aren't the brightest stars in the sky, which potentially points to the sheltered lives they've lived as they mistake an old starship as a Jedi temple. This also reveals that they knew enough about the Jedi in the first place to actually go in and explore it. This then led Jod to sense a moment of opportunity where he could manipulate these kids into believing he was one of those heroic Jedi, like the ones we've seen Wim read about in the stories. It very much is a case of Jod biding his time, waiting for the right opportunity to arise, which of course now it has in the form of the kids. But with that being said, I do feel over the course of the show, and after many episodes of likely going back and forth on whether he can actually be trusted or not, given we already know a little bit about his shady past, that he will eventually come good and even prioritise the kids' well-being over his own, with us then looking back over the show to see it was really about the importance and impact a found family can have above all else. This of course is a concept Jod himself would be all too familiar with if he was indeed once a part of the Jedi Order, but perhaps in the years after the Order fell and he took up a life of piracy, this element of his character was lost. I think if this show wants to stick the landing and be known as a great Star Wars show rather than a great show that's simply set within the universe of Star Wars, they need to bring it back to that found family idea, which is something Star Wars has been doing since all the way back in 1977 with Luke, Han and Leia. Now of course we've got a long way to go before we reach the end of the show, and there's likely a ton of surprises still to be thrown our way, whilst there's also a version of events that could play out where Jod is indeed force sensitive, so that part's still true, but just that he wasn't trained by the Jedi. Instead he was either trained by someone else, perhaps an unknown dark side force user, or even through his life of piracy, he could have come across valuable ancient Jedi or Sith relics, which he'd then learned from. And walking down the Sith path for a moment here, we've already discussed on the channel before regarding a released image showing Jod seemingly deciphering an ancient language at some point during the show, which looks remarkably like the ancient language of the Sith, and that was of course banned from being translated during the time of the Republic.
My programming forbids me from translating it.
So there's potentially more to that idea than meets the eye. If they decided to go down the Sith route, not only would it set up an interesting dynamic with the kids, as he'd want to stay on their good side at least until he arrived on Atin, but it'd also continue the theme of making us, the viewers, remember what it was like the first time a lot of us watched Star Wars as children. You see, so far we've seen the kids admire and aspire to be like the Jedi, but there were some kids out there, myself included, that always felt the Sith were just that little bit cooler.
You have failed me for the last time, Admiral.
So if we see the Skeleton Crew kids faced with that idea and perhaps even take it on board during their make-believe battle scenes, let's say, then they're covering both sides of the coin here. But come the end of the season though, I do feel whatever Jod's full backstory ends up being before he took to the life of piracy, and whether he's trained in the light or the dark side of the Force, because I hope we've ruled out magnets by now, and if we haven't then...
I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you.
But he'll ultimately grow to like and become protective over the kids further down the line. Yeah, when the kids first meet him, he almost certainly saw it as an opportunity to escape and make some credits, rather than genuinely wanting to help the group who are clearly in need and in significant danger themselves. But the version of Jod we see come the end of the story, I believe will be vastly different, where I can see it all coming back to that whole found family concept that's been in Star Wars since the very beginning. Because like I mentioned earlier, it's messages like this, when delivered the right way, that take a good show set within Star Wars and turn it into a great Star Wars show. So do you think Jude Law's Jod Na'Nawood could be trusted, or will he serve as a valuable life lesson that perhaps they wouldn't have gotten had they stayed in that Atin? As always, drop your thoughts, theories and wilder speculations down in the comments below. Remember to leave a thumbs up on the video if you've enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to catch more. I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you.